Welcome to Innovo Radio, your place to gather insight and wisdom for creating healthy organizations. Discover how to uncover defects in your organization and find ways to be a powerful force of change for your organization. Here's your host, David Phillips.
Hey, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Innovo Radio. And today I want to talk to you about a new term for teams that function in the context of Leadership 4.0. I ran across this. A friend of mine shared this link with me earlier this week it comes from LinkedIn by a person named Allard de Jong, who's a certified coach, ICF certified coach of teams and their leaders. And it's his first article on this concept, and so I thought it was intriguing enough to do a podcast about it and kind of talk a little bit about it. So the author talks about a term that he's going to call a liquid team, and he builds this context of the liquid team, and it kind of flows out of the COVID-19 pandemic and all that we've been through in the last year, really. And he frames it in this context of VUCA. Now, when I mentioned this to my friend the other day, I jokingly said that I wish he would not have used VUCA because VUCA is already an accepted term within industry. I wish he would have used CUVA, CUVA, but he calls it a VUCA. I'm going to call it a CUVA. It stands for collaboration, uncertainty, virtualness, and adaptability. And so that's the context in which he understands this new landscape that we're living in, and he's right. So let's talk about those four things, that CUVA mindset or that CUVA context for a moment. And within the context of collaboration, it's replacing competition as more and more people come to understand that we're in this together, and that the only way to move forward is together. More than ever, we have to be able to create synergies, to leverage and share the power of teams, and to create strategic partnerships. And I think in the context, this is valuable in the context of Leadership 4.0, which flows out of Industry 4.0, and the Agile framework that has been around for about 20 years. So you have collaboration going on instead of competition, and we're not. I understand in the context of my role in my organization that I'm not trying to beat out somebody else for a position or for a title or anything like that. That in this day and age, we have got to work together. We have to collaborate together, and I think that's one of the most important things that we can do from a leadership standpoint and leadership strategy is to do that collaboration. And so I think he's perfectly spot on there. That's the second point. The U is uncertainty. So with that, he says that neither the experts nor the traditional sources of authority seem to agree on anything. How could they? We're in uncharted seas where the waves of uncertainty are higher than ever before. This in turn highlights the need to be comfortable not knowing, to act without having all the data, and to relish in the unavoidable ignorance we may feel. And I'm going to tell you right there, he is spot on again. We are living in a very uncertain time, and we have to be comfortable with uncertainty. We have to be uncomfortable with not knowing. And that's one of the hardest things we can do, especially from a leadership standpoint, because your team is looking for clarity. Your team is looking for a level of certainty because our minds crave certainty. And so when you have this level of uncertainty, when you have this idea of not knowing, you've got Should we wear 2 masks or 1? Should we wear masks at all? Does it affect anything? And so that's just kind of a point in all of this. When are we going to come out of this? When's the vaccine's going to be ready? When will the new strains that are popping up, will that essentially invalidate the existing vaccines that are coming on the market? So those are all things that we have to think about, not just in the context of COVID, but what's it going to look like next year? Are we going to get a chance to get back together, and when is that going to happen? And so there's all of these things are up in the air, and from a leadership standpoint, you've got to be able to manage that, and you've got to speak clearly to your team. You've got to be able to be clear. You're not going to have the certainty that many of them crave, or even that you crave. But you've got to be clear and let them know that despite the uncertainty, we're going to be okay. Here's what we're going to do to handle the uncertainty and to move forward. The third thing in this CUVA context, he talks about being virtual or virtualness. So it's a trend from working from home, and social distancing has created an increase in virtual ways of connecting. This requires an ability to create value in relationships online, a need to develop remote skills, tech savviness, and digital-first mindset. So I have worked from home for the past almost 3 years now. I have worked from home in previous times in my work career. And in my life, I love working from home. I have a lot of relationships that are virtual. I have a lot of relationships from people that I honestly have never met. And we just have built those relationships online. And so this for me is not even a second thought. But there are a lot of people who have had to work from home for the first time in their life. They are used to standing around the water cooler and having conversations quite a bit, being face to face, and this has been very difficult for them. And we need to address that. We need to deal with that, and then from a technological standpoint, we have to have this digital first mindset. I agree that we've got to have the digital skills, the technological skills to be able to handle this virtual framework. And it's not easy for some people, especially some older people, even some younger people. You know, the whole I think about kindergarten, first, second grade, in the context of being virtual and trying to learn virtually. That's not easy. I think we're going to find that the impact of first, second, elementary school education is going to have been impacted greatly by this whole idea of virtualness. But it's here, and in some cases, it has caused organizations to rethink their idea of the property that they lease, or the housing, not the proper housing, but the offices that they deal with. And so what I know organizations that have started have said that once their leases are up, they're just going to continue to work remotely. It's cheaper, less overhead in that regard, and there have been so few decreases in productivity. In essence, the work is still getting done efficiently and on time, and because of that, they're just going to allow people to work remotely from now on. And I think that's a great idea. I think you're going to see more of that, more virtual offices, more virtual people working virtually. They can come into the office if they want, and they have rooms set aside for people to come in and work virtually. But I think that virtual context is going to be very real. And then the last piece that he talks about in this CUVA world is adaptability. So he says, in this regard, no matter where you turn, you see examples of people people pivoting, unlearning and relearning, reinventing themselves and their businesses, creating and innovating, putting on their agility pants. Like I said a few days ago, I like windmills, not just because I'm Dutch, but because they are able to remain effective by turning on their axis and adapting to changes in the wind's direction. And so adaptability is huge. You have to be agile. So from an agile framework, from an agile mindset, you're working in short sprints. You don't plan 5 years in advance. You may have a roadmap, but you're really planning on, in some cases, 2 weeks, in some cases 2 months. So or in some cases quarters. So you may have 4 quarters of planning in a year, and you're really looking for value. What's going to be the best for customer value in that regard, and so you have to be adaptable. We've seen restaurants pivot. We've seen the rise of delivery services and their growth. You see new companies. You see companies like Fanatics, who do sportswear for colleges and the pros, pivoted to make masks. So you see beverage companies pivoting to make sanitizer. You see all these pivots that open doors for new industries and new opportunities of growth, and we have to have that adaptability within our context, and it just has to be very real in everything that we do. So within that context, this author, again, his name is Allard de Jong. He proposes this concept of a liquid team, and so he says that liquid teams allow organizations to have the right team at the right moment, and it's very that's a very real and very important point. So he says those characteristics that we talked about, the CUVA characteristics, they're ideal breeding grounds for working and self-organizing. And essentially that's the crux of what systems are. They're self-organizing, and you have self-organizing teams. And so again, he's called this idea of team a liquid team, and here's their characteristics. So they have a fluid shape. They're frequent shapeshifters. One day, they're split. So you have 2 or more located teams, co-located teams, remotely collaborating between different locations. Another is hybrid. So you have one co-located team with remote members, and then you have completely remote. So the shape of your team structure is fluid, and it can change and adapt based on the context, based upon the needs of the organization, and based upon the needs of the moment. The second characteristic is a fluid membership. So it may have, he says that it may have a solid component, meaning that you have people who are consistently there. That membership tends to be fluid. So when you think about that, those are members who come in for a specific purpose and then leave. And you see that happen in trying to troubleshoot issues. You see that in trying to figure out what went wrong. And so that membership is valid. He even says that, back in the 90s, Tom Peters, the great Tom Peters, was talking about the Hollywood model of working together. The best people for the job come together for the time it takes to deliver the product or service, and then they disband. And so that's a very real thing that happens. I think especially in certain contexts, like I said, in troubleshooting, trying to deal with specific issues. I see it a lot in the organization that I'm in when there's a major technological issue, or when something crashes. They bring people. It's kind of an ad hoc self-organizing team where they bring in people from different departments to try to figure out what went wrong and how to take care of it. I think you're probably going to see that grow. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think you're going to see much more fluid teams because you can bring together the best minds from all over the country at that point, especially if you're a global organization. You can have a guy from California and a guy from London on the same call, bring in, and have meetings and have collaboration and begin to develop and build things because technology allows it and technology has enabled it. And so I think you're going to see much more in that fluid membership. Then the last characteristic of this fluid team is what he calls fluid leadership. So the leadership of a fluid team may be classic, or it may be leaderless, or leadership may be rotational, or none of the above, and this configuration may change from one week to the next. And I think you're going to see that as if you have a fluid membership, you are potentially going to have a fluid leadership. And the reason for that is you're gonna rely on the leadership, the skills, the communication of those who are the best at their role, particularly if you're trying to solve a problem and you bring in the best minds to solve the problem, then you're going to the leadership who you're going to follow and who's going to be able to speak credibly on the topic will change and rotate. I think you're still going to have some of those, CIOs, CTOs positions. You're going to have team leadership positions. It's just who takes lead could adapt and change in all of that. So I think that's important. I think that's some of the characteristics. And I think that I really kind of like the term. They have he goes on to say that liquids have a definite volume. So they have the same, they have like, a liter or a pint. But they don't have that definite shape. So it can adjust. It's free-formed. And it can flow. And essentially, it can adjust and be compatible. It can change based on the context in which it's functioning. And I think that that idea works really good in a CUVA context. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are about that. Some are going to push back, some that are managers that may be in the leadership role. And of course, that's different. Those contexts are different. May push back and say, no, I'm the manager and I run the show. And you can't do that in a CUVA context. You've got to have that fluid leadership, fluid membership. It's going to adapt and change. And if you can't live with the uncertainty in this world, in this time, then it's going to be hard to lead. And so I think you've got to embrace uncertainty. And I think that's the key point in all of this, that if you force everything into a structure, then your leadership, your membership, your shape is always going to be a square or a circle. You're not going to be able to adjust and adapt. And so you've got to embrace insecurity and uncertainty and communicate and create clarity within that. And then you open up your teams to ebb and flow based on the needs of the day, based on the moment, the issue that you're dealing with, the thing you're trying to fix, the goal you're trying to achieve, the purpose you're trying to execute on. And so I love this. I love this term. I would love to know what you think about this. I'd love for you to leave comments, share your ideas on what you think a fluid team would look like. And do you think it could exist within your organization? And if not, why not? And maybe even consider how you begin to implement fluid teams or liquid teams, not fluid teams, liquid teams in your own organization. I think it would be a I think it would be a change. It might, in some cases, be a radical change, but I think it could be a very positive change. It can develop leadership. It can build skills and develop your team in ways that I don't think we would have ever been able to appreciate or understand. And I think it can take your organization in quite a few directions if you allow that uncertainty to exist and to embrace it. All right, listen, again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to have you comment. I would love for you to rate our podcast on iTunes or Google Podcasts or anywhere that you get your podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and look forward to our next time together. Take care.